Today we celebrate Wednesday in the sixth week of Easter, and I'd love to share with you the first reading for today. It comes from the Acts of the Apostles. It's chapter 17. And then Peter stood up at the Areopagus and said, "You Athenians, I see that in every respect you are very religious. For as I walked around looking carefully at your shrines, I even noticed an altar inscribed to an unknown God. What therefore you unknowingly worship, I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and all that is in it, the Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in sanctuaries made by human hands, nor is he served by human hands because he needs nothing. Rather, it is he who gives to everyone life and breath and everything. He made from one the whole human race to dwell on the surface of the earth, and he fixed the ordered seasons and the boundaries of their regions, so that people might seek God, even perhaps grope for him and find him, though indeed he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your poets have said, for we too are his offspring. Since therefore we are the offspring of God, we ought not to think that the divinity is like an image fashioned from gold, silver, or stone by human act or imagination. I especially love this particular reading from the book of Acts. You know, the book of Acts is the history of the very early church. And in the early church, you also know that Paul was the apostle to the Gentiles. That's why he went to Greece, and in particular, Athens. My wife Jan and I went on a cruise with Catholic Answers, and when we got to Athens, we went to this place. It's called the Areopagus, right? It is named after a council, an ancient council of Athens. They were the king's advisors. And the name for that council was taken from uh, Areopagus, which is a hill, a low hill, just northwest of an area of Athens called Acropolis. All right. Well, we went and visited that area, and they have the ancient ruins of that area all in place. And you can actually see those shrines to the different Greek gods that Paul was talking about. And you know, the Greeks had many gods, they had a god for everything. Some of the names of these gods you will be familiar with, like Apollo, he's the god of art and music. Ares, the god of war. Uh, Zeus, the god of the sky. Pan, the god of nature. Uh, Oceanus, the god of the ocean. Uh, Hermes, right? The god of trade and travel. And Hercules, you've heard of him, right? He's the god of heroes, sports, and health. Uh, they even had a shrine and an altar to what was called the unknown God. So Paul walks around and he takes all of this in, and then he climbs up on this hill and he makes that declaration to the people of Athens, right? Uh, and shortly after he had to leave, he moved on and I actually went to Corinth. Uh, but they were not very open to his message, especially the merchants in that area and the local government, because they were actually making money, you know, on all of these gods and their shrines and the sacrifices that people would leave, you know, so they didn't want to hear about the one true God. And that's a lot like our world today, that we don't want to hear about the one true God. So many people. And the mission of the church from the time of Paul was always one of evangelization. And like St. Paul, each one of us will have to make the proclamation of the gospel their top priority, as it was for Paul. This work is sorely needed in our culture now more than ever, perhaps even more than it was at the time of ancient Greece. Today, a personal lifestyle as a matter of choice supplants the adoption of a universal God-given code of moral conduct. For if there is no God or no truth, then all moral codes must be man-made. And if you can make up your own rules, so can I. So many people live as practical atheists. They live as if God doesn't exist. And this kind of thinking is devastating our culture and destroying our world. Paul predicted it in his second letter that he wrote to his disciple Timothy. He said, "For the time will come when men will not tolerate sound doctrine, but will follow their own desires and be diverted to myths. But you be different. You be self-possessed in all circumstances. Perform the work of an evangelist. Fulfill your ministry." Pope Francis says that evangelization is the mission of the church. And it's not just for a few, but he says it's my mission, it's your mission, it's our mission. Something that we have got to do together. Actually, the biggest problem in our culture today, in the United States, in Europe, and in much of the world, is the lack of authentic faith. Faith is a relationship, right? A relationship of absolute trust, of fundamental confidence in the power and the goodness of God. And it's a lack of that authentic faith that is the biggest problem in our culture today. Like St. Augustine said, our hearts are restless until they rest in thee, Lord. And no wonder that our world is so restless today. Pope Benedict XVI said that the greatest crisis in our world today is the absence of God in people's lives. So we are the ones that have to change the world. We are the ones who have to heed the words of Jesus when he said to his disciples, "Go and make disciples of all nations." All right? It's up to us. I know the world distracts us from our ultimate end, but evangelization and mission is our ultimate call today. And sometimes we think we're doing all right if we're, not committing any major sins. Sometimes we don't think about sins of omission. That's when we don't do things that we should have done. What about the failure to pray for others? How many times have people asked for our prayers and we didn't do it? The failure to share Christ in public and not be afraid of it. Our failure to fully support charitable causes or to spread and defend the faith. Mahatma Gandhi said this. He said, "If more of you Christians actually lived like your Christ, the whole world would be Christian." And Jesus said, "Yeah, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few." You and I are part of this answer. And a lot of people say, "Well, what can I do? How can I be an evangelist like St. Paul?" Well, Teresa the Little Flower said, "Do little things, but do them with great love." How would we do that? Well, just a few examples here. We can be there when someone needs us. And today, there are many people who need us. We should be focused on family and family ministry, right? Getting involved in ministry and involved together as families. We have to, as a family, know, live, and share our faith. We have to defend God and his church everywhere we are, at work or play or anywhere. And we have to lead others by example, right? We have to be what we're called to be and live like that. So we're called to spread and defend the faith. We should pray every day that God will lead us to someone who is in need of knowing Christ. We're to pray every day that God will lead us and help us lead someone else to Christ. And in order to do that, we have to talk about God. It can't be just something that we talk about at church on Sunday. I want to share with you a story. This is a great story. It's about a Vietnamese woman and her son. I heard the story from Tom Peterson, right? And you're going to be very surprised when you hear this. It's not that long. Let me share it with you. But Tom Peterson experienced a dramatic conversion at a Cursillo retreat weekend. He said that it supercharged his faith and spiritually. and it left him with a sense of mission. Tom tells a story about a Vietnamese woman who went to Mass every day in order to pray for her son. And one day she stopped Tom after Mass and asked for his help. She said that her son Lee had been away from the church for a long time and hasn't been to Mass in years. And she wanted Tom to visit her son at his place of business and try to convince him to come back to the church. Well, Tom reluctantly agreed. He armed himself with several pamphlets and went to meet with Lee. Well, Tom told Lee that his mother loved him very much and that she wants nothing more than for him to come back to the church. Lee said that he would rather experience God in nature. He told Tom that he was an avid fisherman and that he would rather find God on the lake. Well, Tom invited him to the parish and made him promise to come to Mass at least once, if for nothing else than to please his mother. He promised Lee that God would speak to him at Mass if he would only remain open to his grace. But weeks went by and Lee never showed up. His mother still prayed and cried every day. And then one Sunday morning, there was Lee, standing in the narthex, looking like a deer in headlights. He told Tom that he had been fishing since they talked and that his line got caught on something. When he reeled it in, he found a crucifix with a fishing hook in it at the end of his line. He asked if Tom thought it was a sign. You think? Well, Lee asked Tom if he could go to the sacrament of reconciliation, and Tom got the priest to hear his confession before he started the Mass. And Lee received communion for the first time in years and stayed after Mass to thank God for his mother and Tom. He was there every Sunday after that, and a few weeks later, Tom got an invitation to his wedding. And after the wedding, Lee took Tom aside and thanked him for saving his life. You see, Lee had been very depressed and even been seriously contemplating suicide. Nothing was going right in his life, and he thought he had no reason to live. The moment that crucifix came up out of the water was when his life began to change. Lee told Tom they'd been in prison. When he finally got out, he just couldn't relate to God. God was nowhere to be found in his world outside of jail. He said that he actually found God more often in prison than on the outside. In prison, people at least had time to think and search, and there were actually ministers there to help. On the outside, everyone was too busy, too distracted by the world around them. It was this encounter with Christ through Tom that changed everything. It was after that one visit from Tom that Lee's life began to change. This experience moved Tom Peterson so much that he started a ministry for lapsed Catholics. You may have heard of it. It's called CatholicsComeHome.org. Today, the message of this ministry is shared around the world in 30 different languages and has helped tens of thousands of people return to the Catholic Church. You see, all that Tom did is went to Lee and talked to him and invited him. He wasn't afraid to talk about God. Most people are. And so today, we have to change. We really have to be a new apostolic age. We have to be on mission. We have to move from what I call maintenance to mission. Maintenance is just maintaining our spirituality in a minimalistic way. Okay? We go to Mass on Sundays. We are as good as we can. We don't commit any intentional sins. And we pray regularly. We maintain our Catholic spirituality. I'm talking about moving to the next level, moving from maintenance to mission, because we are living in an age of extremely rapid secularization. I don't have time to talk to you about the statistics, but if you saw that, you would realize. When I say secularization, I mean moving away from being religious and church-oriented society to being a totally secular society. In other words, God and our relationship with God doesn't matter. What matters is the world, right? That's why we need a new apostolic age. We have to be the apostles, those sent on mission in today's world. Because in this post-Christian moment, We are called to be radically on mission. This is the new evangelization. Remember the sacrament of confirmation. Here's what the Catechism says about it in Article 1285. It says the sacrament of confirmation strengthens them and obliges them more firmly to witness to Christ by word and deed and to spread and defend the Catholic faith. That's our mission, folks. That's what we're all about. That was the mission of St. Paul when he visited Athens, and that's our mission today. God bless you.